that is why here was the original topic that I suggested, building in flexibility and structure during asynchronous teaching in a pandemic. Like I said, for asynchronous teaching, the class is usually very structured. But then within that, because of the pandemic, I had to build in various kinds of flexibilities so that students who are not following along could also find their way around my class, but at the same time giving space for those who were, even the type A students had an opportunity to kind of be with me. And so this is really, some of you may recognize some of these pointers that was actually sent to us from the Teaching and Learning Center. We faced various kinds of scenarios. A student stopped showing up for class. A student was still logging in, but missing huge chunks of work. And in some cases, a student was participating, but not producing work at the level that we would have liked them to produce work at, for various reasons. They were not familiar with the online scenario. They had just come in from high school in my case. They hadn't met any of their peers. They were not, they didn't know me. And so I had to find a way to make them comfortable in my class. And so while there was a fixed structure to the class, at some point, I also had to decide what is really important for students to learn in this semester in my class. And so, which wasn't quite the same as what either I had started with or, for the plan. I had to kind of abandon my plan slightly as I went along. And so, this is also some of the wording is derived from, again, some of the suggestions we got. But hidden curriculum is a term used by Semper in one of their publications. But really, while I had my syllabus and I had my structure, and I'll show you one of my classes very soon, but while there was this structure, I had a hidden curriculum. I had my learning objectives, but these were the very basic things that I wanted students to learn before they actually, passed my class to move on to the next level. The other thing is, students will inevitably come in with gaps in their prior learning in any class, which is much easier in some ways to handle in a face-to-face class. I mean, you can just invite a bunch of students to take them aside and talk to them while others are doing group work, for example. Or you can just say, hey, wait 5 minutes after class and I'll talk to you. But those kinds of supplements to learning is not as easy in this kind of online scenario. And I'm thinking about that as I am kind of doing my syllabus this time. So, maybe have folders that simply address this. If a student is not familiar with paragraph construction, for example, and I'm not focusing on that in this class, I must have something that I can easily direct students to. The other part of this is that I teach 3 sections per semester. And so, the one-on-one time on Zoom solves some of those problems, but it's not always easy for me to allocate as much time as I'd like for many of these students. And so I classified some of my strategies this way here. Ordinary interventions in any semester. What really helped me to track students who were struggling was some kind of midterm assessment. And once again, because I teach a writing class, we have an electronic portfolio. But I realize not everybody teaches writing, and they may have other kinds of assessments. But around the 7th or the 8th week, having some kind of rigorous midterm assessment and providing copious feedback on that really helped me track students who are struggling in various ways. And in fact, my feedback on their midterm assessment was far more copious than what I actually ended up giving them at the assessment or the feedback that I gave them at the end of the semester. And I was able to kind of pull back many of the students at midterm because of this assessment. So let me just go back here. Weighing grades is another option at some point if there are students who are not being able to catch up. But if you see there are assignments where everybody is not doing so well, then perhaps the weightage for that particular assignment can be altered. Now, curving grades is another option. And these, again, are taken from some of the advice that we had from the department. And so I thought that sharing these would be useful for all of us, even beyond our department. But in my case, in my classes, there was a sharp binary divide between students, relatively privileged students who had space to work in, who were not working outside of class, and they were pretty good at catching up with the way the course was going. And then there was the other set of students who, like I said, I had a couple of students whose parents lost their job, or some of them actually had COVID, lost a parent, and they were at the other end of the spectrum. So statistically, I wasn't sure whether curving grades would be a solution in this kind of a situation. And so this time, I'm going to start out with my hidden curriculum, which is going to include a few last chances. And so, for example, how am I going to handle these kinds of challenges if I have them? I discovered them around the 3rd, 4th week, or even maybe the 7th or the 8th week or beyond. Am I going to think of some assignments in a reduced form? So for example, if I have a research assignment, which maybe, requires extensive sources, maybe 10 sources, am I going to be able to convert that in some way so that the basic learning objectives are still met in my class, but do this in an alternate form? So for example, last semester, I had a multimodal academic poster assignment, which was really involved, which needed research. It wasn't an ordinary poster, but somewhere along the way, for some students, I changed that to a group of regular posters or a brochure, which didn't require as much of research. Contract intervention, this is really a great suggestion that we had from the writing department. And I really like that, everybody, we can write our own contracts, but kind of make a deal between the student and the instructor where you say, you're going to complete these assignments at these times, and give them fresh deadlines, and then make them sign that. I mean, I know that all of this is not legally enforceable, and that is not the objective, but that might help them struggling students towards the end to kind of catch up and still pass the class. And I'm talking about all this because Shumana, who's the next speaker, is going to talk about master's students, which is a very different scenario. We talked a lot about compassionate grading last semester during a pandemic, and we do need to show compassion. But at the same time, I wondered about my borderline, how much compassion is real compassion? And like in any relationship, what is tough love? And how much do they actually need to learn to successfully go on to the next level? You can't pass every student. You can't give every student an A. And for me, doing these, thinking about these assignments in their what I'm calling reduced form. And knowing that kind of by mid-semester really helped me to decide the extent of the compassion that was really compassionate to show. And I think I might try to show you my class a little bit, because I'm talking about flexibility and structure, and this is probably not making that much sense without actually having something concrete in front of you. So I'm going to stop my screen share and move on to showing you my Blackboard classes. And let me go back to Google Chrome again. So, okay, let me see. Can people see my screen? No?
I see you on the screen.
Okay.
Now
I see your Blackboard.
Okay, thank you. All right. So one of the little tricks, I'm not going to talk about little tricks because this class is not really about Blackboard, but one thing that really helps me, and especially those of us who teach multiple sections, is to change the color, because when I'm updating something, I can differentiate very easily between different classes. But so since I'm talking about the structure, I'll just show you how I divide my class into modules. And within the modules, these are actually content areas. But as I have the content areas here, I also put in various important things, like, for example, we have a workshop which is mandatory to attend, or what class is going to be how long, the deadline, etc., etc. But also, as you can see, they know what they're supposed to do every week. And so, for example, in week 1, I have a little overview. Week 1 has a welcome video. I have a Blackboard overview for them, and then the work that they have to do. And sometimes if I want something technical, I just create a video and show it to them. Now, conceptually, again, since this class is not about Blackboard, I'm just going to talk about pedagogy. Now, sometimes I see this structure, it really helps. But as you advance through the class, for example, for things like research, they start, some of them start having difficulties kind of moving between weeks. If they're in week 6 and they have to go back to a prompt that they had in an earlier week, they need all of the work in one place as well. And so to help that, I also have a folder called course materials, where they have all of the work here, the prompts and rubrics together, readings and handouts, examples of student papers, many of the video lectures here. The way that it helps me is, when I have struggling students in the second half of the semester, instead of directing them to the modules, I just direct them to some of these folders so that they can catch up. The other way, you saw the modules and you saw that I have the little overviews for each module, but sometimes another way that I do the same thing is through the announcements. So the announcements go out as emails, as all of you know. This is the welcome announcement that I had with all of the important stuff here. But sometimes I'll have, I'll send out pointers for a week. And if somebody's missed something, I'll just tell them to go to week 5 pointer or whatever it is and check this out. Sometimes I even send video feedback, the global comments this way, and then they can just go and check individual comments on their assignments, so that so that I don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. That way I reduce my work too. The other thing that really helps me is I have a Start Here tab. And I do all of this on Google Docs because if I'm teaching multiple sections, I don't have to change everything every time. And so, this really tells them some of the very basics that they need to start. Then I direct them to the modules, what kind of synchronous sessions they might have. But also, I have the same set structure for every week where they learn something by watching my lecture. They read or view something, which is the learning part. Then they discuss something, and in my case, they discuss on the, post on the discussion board. They have some kind of short assignment, maybe a worksheet to develop their ideas. Then they write and they reflect. Now, I realize for advanced level classes, like, maybe the one Shumana is going to talk about, this kind of structure may not help, but at the freshman level, they don't do these same things every week. Some of them, if they have a long paper, then they don't do some of these other things. But this kind of structure really helps. And and I do this on Google Docs so that they can move around as they like. The other thing I do is I have a Zoom links tab, and I put in all the Zoom invitations here again, because it's a Google Doc. If something happens to a meeting room, I just change it on the Google Doc. I have my office, but I also have a set of instructions which kind of tell them things like how to create an account, John Jay account, or that they should mute themselves, etc., etc. But also, some of them I realize are on the phones. They will sign in from a browser. They may not create an account, and then they can just click on the link and get on my Zoom class. And so, so this is a pretty rigid structure in a way, but I've tried to build in flexibility, and I'm doing more of that this semester, so that even though I have modules, cross-linking modules for me becomes really important. And I have a link to the Writing Center, which is very important for us. I also have a student questions and comments clarification section where they can answer each other's questions for very simple questions, so that they can check this board and then email me, so that I am not overwhelmed with every little question. The other thing I wanted to show you was how I use groups. So of course, you can use groups to do things like peer review, where they can exchange material. But the other way that I use groups is sometimes I have hidden groups that they can't see. And so maybe halfway through the semester, if I realize that some students are struggling, I can create a little group, and I can send the same email to these sets of students, so that every time I don't have to look for them. And then I take out kids who have caught up, and they don't need those emails anymore. And there may be others who haven't caught up. And I have an important dates tab, things like that. And again, Google Docs, so I can keep changing it. So this is something that I wanted to share. And I think I still have a few minutes of my part here. And so what I'm going to now ask you for the next maybe 7 to 8 minutes is to think about something about what you do in your class. And so I did have a couple of discussion questions, and let me reach that here. I wanted to ask you about how you handle some of these situations. I talked a lot about how I try to handle them in my class, but inevitably you have the overachiever kid who, in an online scenario, if you release all the modules, will try to do all of the blogs at the same time, or do all of the discussion posts within the first 5 days. Fortunately, we don't have too many of these kids, but I always have 2 or 3. You have the good engaged student who's in trouble because of a health crisis, and we have more and more of those, or who has caregiving duties because somebody has fallen sick. You have the task completer B. I'm calling them that because this is the person who will try to directly log into assignments and try to complete assignments one by one, like some kind of industrial, task sequence, and not realize the larger connections we're trying to make them do. You have the shadow presence, the student who always comes for Zoom classes, logs in, but does not turn in any work. You have the student, I've had many of these last semester, who's going through a mental health crisis, feeling isolated, feeling the lack of communities. Or you can have your own category too. And we have our own pandemic crisis too. I went through a personal loss last semester. I was struggling with that. And so how do you balance these issues? And so with that, I think Shumona plans to start at around 10 a.m. to have her part of the talk. So I'll just stop screen sharing, and I just wanted people to just share their experiences for the next few minutes. Would anybody like to jump in? And this is the part that I dread, because this is what I ask my students, and Zoom is a very different scenario. Remember, what kind of students have you had? And if you're thinking of being structured yet flexible, what have your experiences been?
Hey, Madhura. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
All right. So I set my Blackboard up similar to you, not exactly the same, but similar. I put it in all the assignments laid out there like that. And what I do, most of the work I do during this time is on the group discussion board. And what I do is I set it so that it doesn't appear until a certain date. It goes along with the syllabus. So week number 1 will appear there, and week number 2 won't appear until week number 1 is due, and straight through. So you have a week to do it, but you don't get ahead of yourself, because I find that students who do that, they're not even really reading the book, and they're not absorbing it, and they're just trying to get work out of the way, and they don't always do that well either, on any one particular part of it. So
right,
I like to structure it similarly, and I just set the dates right in Blackboard.
Mm-hmm. And you can also hide the modules. So, right. I release 3 at a time, mostly.
Oh, I have the assignments all there, all right? But I could do that, as you say. But when they want to do the actual work, they have to do it in the discussion board, and there it will not appear until I want them to do it. So they can look ahead as to what the assignment may be, but they're not gonna be able to actually submit it until there that week.
Right.
But you could also, like you say, those weekly things, you can make them appear when you want them to appear too.
Yes, totally. Totally. Anyone else wants to say something? As I said, I'm a very bad multitasker, so I'm going to look at the chat in a moment. But anything that anyone else wanted to say?
Well, along the same lines as what Arthur said, I have also had to learn from experience not to keep the entire course available to my students from the beginning. For that very reason, I've had students jumping all over and then emailing me questions about something that's irrelevant at this point, getting ahead of themselves and getting a little bit lost in the weeds. And the other problem is that if you do expose the entire course, and I think somebody had asked the group, don't we have to put the whole course out there for the whole entire 15 weeks? I do not believe that's true. And if you do that, you don't get the flexibility option where something may have occurred to you a little bit later and you want to bring that into your unit 2 or unit 4 or unit 6 class. But now that you've shown the world your entire course, you have less ability to do that. So I do like showing just a little at a time as well.
I mean, at the same time, and I totally understand that, and that's why I release 3 modules at a time. But I do have that important dates link where they have the major assignment due dates, which kind of I had to throw out the window last semester. But in a pandemic, the students who want to plan also get a chance to plan very well, because many of them are really struggling, as I discovered, with so many other things. And I was struggling too, like I said. And so, just having that structure helped all of us be on the same page. So I guess with that, there'll be, I wish we could talk more, but I think Shumona has her time. So, and Shumona, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. I speak Bengali, so that's how I pronounce the name, but I don't know how you pronounce it. Feel free to correct me. So I have 4 different ways of pronouncing my name based on, all the North Indian languages, which do it differently. And then English speakers don't have the same consonants and the vowels. So I apologize if I mispronounced it.
Don't apologize, but I knew right away when you said my name that way, you were from Bengal. You were from Calcutta, I suppose, or where?
That's right. Yes.
We're both from India, from South India, and brought up in America. And we can always hear, from accents where.
Well, I actually grew up in Calcutta, and it's in the east of India. But yes, I see totally what you mean. Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that, I hand over the stage to Shumona.
Okay, yeah, and so I pronounce my name Sumana, and I have been, and thank you so much, Madhura, for agreeing to collaborate with me this morning, and for Gina Foster to put this whole thing together. It's a privilege to be here with all of you. And I didn't realize there were 24 people. I thought there was only 4 people because that's all I can see. But I guess I can see more if I put this open this. And so I've been working at John Jay for a few years now, teaching 1 class specifically online and 1 class in person. However, of course, that didn't work out this last year. And my 1 class that I do teach is in the master's program. Like Madhura had mentioned, she's there in the beginning of these students' college lives. And I'm sort of on the other end where they're looking at different things. They're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, wondering what they're going to be doing with their education. Career is a very big part of the discussions that happen in my class, because they have made a commitment this far into what they're doing. So those are the students that I get. Most of them are really very eager to get good grades so that they can get on with their world, and things, the things that they want to do become possible for them. And so it's a very nice class. My class is called Constitutional Law and the Criminal Justice. I'm an attorney, actually working full time. So this my position at John Jay is as an adjunct, and so I do. Well, when I started a couple of years ago, I was given the opportunity to teach an online class, which I wasn't thrilled about, to tell you the truth. I wanted to be in person, but I took it because that's what was offered to me. And thank goodness, because now I'm ahead of the curve. And when COVID happened, I was, all set up, ready to go. Not very technologically savvy at all. I've had to learn very, painstakingly throughout. But now I think I've got the hang of Blackboard and all the things that Blackboard has to offer, and other tools. So I'll probably be mentioning some of these this morning. But what I wanted to do at this point is pull up my screen share. So this is what I'm going to do here. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to screen share. I have a, let's see if I can do this. Okay. Okay. Can you see it? Why is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. So my presentation to you this morning is entitled Tips for Creating an Engaging Asynchronous Online Class with Structure and Flexibility, because that's what we are really discussing this morning, how to do that. Okay. So the goals that I have, and I assume that this is pretty much all of us, we all have these same goals for teaching our students. We want to stimulate motivation. We want to facilitate dynamic online discussions, encourage a collaborative learning environment, and also create a safe, comfortable environment for people to feel like they can be themselves, they can have their personality understood and respected. And whatever things that they may be going through to be understood as well. So my class, I had said to you before, is called Constitutional Law and the Criminal Justice System. And I'm going to actually pivot now to show you in my own Blackboard how I go ahead with my goals and how I've structured my class to address those same goals that we spoke about. So now I need to stop sharing, right? I have to stop sharing this. Okay, stop sharing. And I'm going to go right into Blackboard. That's where it is. Let's go there. Okay. Oh, I guess I didn't. Oh, I didn't share. Oh, sorry. I have to share and go into here. Okay. So I have pulled up 2020 spring term, the Constitution and the Criminal Justice System master's class, which I teach. I have inherited this class from Professor Yuma, and I'm very grateful for him because he was a real good mentor to me and showed me a great way to organize and present this complicated information in a very available format for my students who are not pre-law or law students at all, but simply criminal justice majors of all different areas. So it's a very it's a complex class that goes through the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments predominantly of the Constitution, and we keep it. I've used what he's given me, but I've made it my own. I've reworded many things, and I've presented it in my own way. But in general, each unit will have, you know, a video, introduction video from me, and with detailed learning objectives. So the very first one is we're going to be looking at an overview. So there's separation of powers and federal government and states and what are the limited powers. And then we do end up talking about the Sixth Amendment, which is the right to counsel. But I just put that out there so that each unit, like I had mentioned before, I only show that one unit at a time. I hide all the other units. I don't even show 2 or 3. I show just one unit so they can see this and sort of soak it up. There's a readings. I have cases over here that I offer to them for very important readings for us because everything is really based on Supreme Court cases. So the cases are there. I don't have any textbook. I don't ask them to buy anything because everything is really on this in this course. The next thing that I do, and I tried one year to take this off and I got people upset with me, my students actually, this wiki. A lot of people say, oh, I hate wikis. You know, for my class, it's the best way to get this information out to the students and be able to, for me, control what the content is on my end, but for them to feel empowered about controlling the content as well and engaging in discussion right on the wiki. So that's been a very important part of my my strategy, especially to get the class to collaborate. So what we do in this wiki, I'll show you this wiki. It's all marked up because this is from last semester. So you'll see a lot of highlights. You'll see these are students who actually talk to each other, like MC, BP, I know, blah, blah, blah. They will be talking, you know, very sort of engaged with each other because something has sparked an interest in them, something that was written in my wiki, which I keep it, like I was saying before, very easy language. Only the black is my wiki. Can you imagine? All of this stuff is what the students themselves feel like they want to present to the class. And what I do with this wiki is I work with my TA, and I don't know if everybody has a TA, but this woman actually was my former student, and she emailed me one day, and she said, "I'm interested in teaching. Would you mind if I could be your TA?" I was very flattered that somebody wanted me my TA, so I got her permission, and she's, you know, very useful to me for so many different reasons. But one of them is that she and I both every Saturday have a time where we talk about the wiki, because it's a lot of work here. It's a lot of stuff to put together, because we do want to make sure that students are being heard and their comments are being attended to. So we work on this together because it's a little overwhelming just for me to do. And so we do that together. So it's been very good to have her and to have this structure for us to work on. Okay, so that's my wiki, and I'll go back to Unit 1. And then another way that I do love to get some kind of collaboration, you know, this, well, I guess I'm in my slide. I didn't mention, but I'm in my slide, which should say stimulate motivation, but I'm just going to talk about the different ways I try to motivate my students. I try to get them to talk to each other. I try to, first of all, we do the introduction in our discussion. We do introductions for each other. And I do like the introductions. I do an icebreaker. I know Gina doesn't like the words icebreaker. I've learned that from her. But the introduction is basically to get people to talk to each other and to find common ground where maybe they can become resources for one another. Now they're looking for careers, and a lot of them have helped each other sort of iron out their question marks on what careers they might want to do, or suggest places that are hiring. It's beautiful things happen when you get students together who are interested in helping one another. And I think what we do with the icebreaker is I put my comments in the discussion, and I facilitate this kind of engagement with the students. So I feel like that's a really important part of my course, especially in an online course, and especially in a pandemic, teaching an online course. People are very isolated and feeling a little bit lonely, and also maybe not knowing that there is a community to have. And I think this is building our community. So we do that, and then we do, you know, questions. I do substantive questions, and I ask them about substantive questions, but it's also very engaged, because somebody's going to say, I don't agree with you. I think that it's that guy did not, you know, was not entitled to a counsel, right to counsel because of A, B, and C. And you see them really getting involved in rights, you know, I don't like the way that this happened because and they'll bring in narratives, they'll bring in stories, and it's very, very interesting to see, even though we're not in class together, I hear their voices, and I hear them in a lot of the times in the discussion. So I do like my discussion group part to my course. Okay, so I have used play posits. Some people don't like them, and this particular time I didn't use it, but sometimes I do. Play posits, I don't know if you use them, but they'll help you out in the Technology Center if you are interested. What play posits do for me is it just keeps people a little bit more excited about, they like to have little challenges along the way. So the play posits give you a little scenario, and then you have to decide, is that a good scenario or a bad scenario? So it's a little bit interactive. And I think that kids, students, and everybody likes having a little interactivity. So sometimes the play posits don't work. And that's the problem with the play posits I've had. So I've had a little technology problem with them, but if they work, they're great. So that sort of supplements some of my areas of trying to stimulate motivation in learning. I also do this, like Madhura had mentioned, she does announcements. I do so many announcements. But my very first announcement is the announcement where I set the clear deadlines of a learning module. And this is for everybody's sake, especially mine, because I need to be able to not be on every single minute of every single day, checking up on everybody. So what I do is I go, we have 8 weeks. It's a condensed course. So I say, units start on a Sunday and they end on a Friday, and Friday midnight. Friday's fine, because Saturday is the day I have my my TA meeting to go over the wiki. And I go over all the discussion questions to see if they were answered correctly or incorrectly or whatever. And on Saturdays as well, I write out a full announcement with all the information that I gathered from the discussion questions and the wikis. I have 2 different announcements. One is to address the wiki, and one is to address the discussion questions in full. I also give them in the introduction video, if they want introduction announcement, if they want any further information for their particular situation, to please email me directly, because I'd rather have a one-on-one if it's a specific thing for them. But if it's for the whole class, I'd rather do it in an announcement. I also mentioned in my announcement, when is the next week starting? So the weeks always start on Sunday morning, Sunday to Friday. So I think that way they feel like they can really get involved in that unit's work and know what's expected of them, and when they have to really get their act together and finish up their work so that they get full credit for that week. I do, some of what I do is graded. Some I don't grade, I just go for participation. I do some exams I do 1 midterm and 1 final, but I also have graded questions along the way. So there's a few ways, if students feel like they hated their midterm grade, there's ways to bring that up. It's not just a one and done kind of thing. So that keeps them going, I think. And the other thing I think that keeps them going is just getting back in touch with them as soon as they email you and say, hey, I got you. Even if you don't have the answer for them right there, just say, I understand your issue. Let me get back to you. I'm working on something else. Or this is what's going on. Or I'm sorry you don't like your grade, but this is. So I think they're craving, a lot of my students anyway, are craving a connection, not just with the other students, but with me as well. And when they reach out, it's an opportunity for me to really make them feel like they're being heard. Another thing, well, we talked about facilitating dynamic online discussions with the discussion board, with the wiki. I've never used this, but I've heard about Slack. I did a little webinar. I haven't put that in my my toolbox yet. I feel like it might end up being a lot more work because now you have everybody in the palm of your hand in your phone. So I don't have that, but people do like it, and you can do so many different things. Like actually, you can make group projects and things that you can organize groups, and there's so many different things. And if you're interested, there is a webinar that Brian Tomlinson sent to me, and it's there at John Jay if you're interested in putting Slack into your technology. And another goal would be encourage a collaborative learning environment. I guess we spoke about that too. We talked about the wiki, the discussion board. This is what I do to really encourage a collaborative learning environment. I identify and I praise the collaborative efforts when I see them. I do put those in announcements so that everybody can see that. I do mention people's names. I think they like to be mentioned. I only positive, never any negative, highlight of anybody. If it's negative, it has to be one-on-one. But if it's positive, I like telling people how wonderful that it was that blah 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 happened. And I think it gets people excited and motivated to do a little more of that, because there's a little, recognition. And the last thing, that the goal that we have here is creating a safe, comfortable environment for people. Students are just like us. We're all sick and tired of the pandemic. We're scared. Some of us have had difficult times this last year, and we're full of anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety. This is an opportunity for us to give students a safe environment if they need it to. It starts with me and also in my welcome address, in my announcement, is to mention that this is a safe environment, that we are here as a group and we're here to support one another. There's clear instructions also that there's mutual respect for one another, and that each individual's personality is appreciated and accepted, and there's no fear of judgment. So those things I do like to put out right in the front, so that we have a respectful group discussions going forward. I do an optional Zoom social hour. At first I was doing it every week and no one was showing up, or maybe one person or two people. And that was pre-pandemic. I'm thinking of bringing it back. May not be every single week, but the optional Zoom social hours are specifically to just get together and talk, and not talk about substantive material. As you know, asynchronous teaching, you cannot mandate them to show up at any particular time. So I don't mandate it, but it's an opportunity for people just to feel a little community if they feel like it. So that's what I like to do. And another thing that I do for creating a safe, comfortable environment, sometimes students don't like talking to the professor about things, whatever it is. And I do offer my TA as another alternative, and she's more their age group, and then maybe somebody who could relate a little bit better to something if they felt that. So that's worked out very well sometimes. But those are the things that I have implemented for my class in terms of creating that safe space that we all sort of need. I guess I'm looking at, I have a few minutes, only 7 minutes, right? Am I on 7 minutes? Oh my goodness. So I thought, well, Madhura and I had thought about this, that, she was going to do a little discussion with the class, with the group. And I thought I would do something that was a little bit closer to my teaching with you guys, and wherever we go is wherever we go. We have 7 minutes for this, but part of this whole like flexibility and rigidity or structure. The structure is what we talked about. The flexibility, and this is why I said I don't like opening up my entire course, is because in my particular course, current events really make for an exciting class. And so constitutional issues come up. It seems like every single time I have taught, some major constitutional issue has come up to discuss. And I'll just mention a couple of them. Hillary Clinton's presidential defeat, even though she had more popular votes, and what was the popular vote and the electoral vote? What is there a constitutional backup for why she didn't become president with more popular votes? First impeachment of Donald Trump. What were the constitutional issues there? The Senate confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh, arguments on either side, and did you feel that the Senate reached the correct decision? The death of RBG, and what did that mean to the Supreme Court? And the focus of looking at the rest of the Supreme Court and to see if there was balance or imbalance and why, and looking at certain Supreme Court cases that were decided by the remaining members of the bench. So of course we're at the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump, right? And we're still going on with it. Is this constitutional or unconstitutional? And that's the question, and it's being deliberated as we speak. And it gets people excited that you bring in, something current that can be part of, a dinner talk kind of thing. So when I think of things like this, I think of how to make it interesting for them to brainstorm and come up with ideas. So, sometimes, a couple of times I've done just for like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she passed away, I asked them to do a presentation that was just for me of the bench, of the remaining bench. Where are they leaning? What kind of bench are we're working with at this moment? I kind of want to make it a little more interesting. And I was thinking of doing like splitting up the students into which category that they feel very strongly about. Should he be impeached? A lot of people say no, or convicted, I should say, on the impeachment, or should he not be convicted on the impeachment? And that's something that I would just infuse maybe in a discussion board question, or I could ask them to do an optional sort of extra credit paper if they felt like it. But does anybody have like a more engaged sort of collaborative idea that I could present if I wanted to do something like this for my class?
I think that's a great point, Shumana, about because our topic was flexibility. I think in the current semester, especially with everything going on, no matter what the topic is, it just happens that right now my class too is about sort of diversity, equity, and education. But even if it had not been, it's a very good idea to keep the structure flexible so that inevitably you have to bring in things that are going on around us. And one of the things that has really helped me, if I'm only thinking of the asynchronous components, is the announcements tab. Again, it gives you some space to talk about things that are not quite directly related to the course material. But I also do something called weekly reflections, which may not be so appropriate for higher level classes, but where they get an opportunity to write about, I have a direct prompt where I say, connect the current module to the previous module and what is coming before or to the larger goals of the class. And that makes them connect between disparate elements of an asynchronous class, which can often become very task-like. But I think this semester, I'm also going to ask them directly to connect it to what is going on. Sorry, that was not a direct answer to your call for suggestions. If anybody has any suggestions, please go ahead. And Gina sent us a little bit of a warning. I think we have about 1.5 to 2 minutes left.
Oh my, well, who would like to speak?
And maybe you can stop screen share so that, you know, we are back to our faces again.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Okay. Oh, 1 minute, please wind down. Okay. Well, it does. If anybody wants to, you know, suggest what would make for a fun little group activity, Dawn?
I actually had a question about the weekly reflections. Do the students post those in the discussion board, or is it or somewhere else?
In my case, I make them into assignments, and then later they put it on their electronic portfolios. But the reason, you know, they post it as an assignment is, you know, like I had a student who was going through, you know, mental health crises. She was feeling very isolated. Sometimes there are private things also in the weekly reflections. I constantly tell them, focus on the work, and this is an academic exercise, but I do, during the pandemic, give them some space to talk about other things too. But they do submit those as assignments because sometimes private things come out. But I always tell them that the electronic portfolio is a public document. So when you post them there later, you decide. It's a writing class. So that's another part of their training. That may not be appropriate for every class, but I make them reflect every week, and that makes them do the connections from week to week and with the larger goals of the course. And then in the middle and at the end, I have larger reflections, a midterm and a final reflection, where they're very free to cut paste from their weekly reflections if they like, but they have to create comprehensive, longer documents.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess we are at 10:30. So I guess thank you so much